What?
No, no, that was for you to go. Three, two, one.
But what was the
Oh,
sound effect afterward? Three,
I think
two, one.
I was realizing I was screwing up my own fingers. Oh my word! You do that with your tongue. I'm doing it with my fingers. Talk straight.
Oh, why? Crooked is more fun. It's like Straight Street in Damascus. Ain't nothing straight about it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bearded Bible Brothers. I am one of the hosts, Matt Crosswhite, joined by the ever-giggling Josiah Marshall. How are you, sir?
You started it.
Of course I did. For those of you that are newer to our podcast and don't know this, one of my personal goals in life is to always try and make Josiah laugh pretty hysterically right before we start recording. So that as I'm doing the intro, he's trying to gather himself. And it's just a fun way to start the episodes.
Right.
It also demonstrates that I am a younger sibling and we can be persnickety and troublesome sometimes.
That's the truth.
Yep. So how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well now that I'm chatting with you. This is good. I always enjoy laughing.
Yep. Yep.
I always enjoy laughing. Okay. All right. I'll tell you a funny story. This past weekend on Saturday night, we went over and hung out with some friends. And I'm going to say this even for a recording audience because even my friend thinks it's funny. We had a ball with the Balls. Yes, I said it. Their last name is Balls. So anyways, we're sitting there at the kitchen table and he is telling me story after story after story of him and his brothers, his grandfather, his dad, great granddad, and everything. And I am just laughing. And I start slapping the table a little bit. And then at one point, I guess I slapped the table one too much. Something fell off the bottom of the table and landed on the floor.
Oh my goodness.
He leans over and picks it up. And he just starts laughing. It looks like it's one of those little tongues that helps when you pull apart a table and then you realign it back up. It just keeps that alignment of the table when you push it back together. So sure. Those little lips.
Oh my goodness.
So apparently my giggling can be destructive. I've just got to not let that happen.
Your hands joining in the giggling can be destructive.
True. It makes me think of Monsters Inc. a little bit. How they found out that laughter was much more powerful than scream.
Yes.
When you get to the point where you're slapping the table, I guess that's the atomic bomb version of
right?
Too much power.
It's like a knee slapper on steroids. Imagine doing that to your knee. You'd need a replacement in a couple of years.
Ouch. No kidding. Oh, man, that would hurt. But, okay, I think my giggling fit is over, thanks to you.
Speaking of knee replacements, we were walking out of Costco. Yeah, we were walking out of Costco the other day, and the guy at the doors, after you pay, you show him your receipt and he checks it and stuff.
Yep.
I noticed that he had an artificial leg because it's Tucson and everybody wears shorts. And I glanced down at it, and it wasn't just like carbon fiber looking or metal. It looked like a whole bunch of Marvel comics like wrapped around his leg. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then I noticed he was wearing Batman shoes. Marvel leg and Batman shoes. I said, do you have a lot of personal conflict in your life? Are you confused? He's like, excuse me?
DC
I said,
and
well, you've
Marvel.
got a Marvel leg and Batman shoes, DC shoes. He goes, hey, what can I say? I like both. And my wife just looks at me and shakes her head like, oh my gosh. You open the conversation with, are you confused? Like, well, it was funny. I thought it was funny. He thought it was funny. So
It's funny.
my wife was embarrassed. Everyone had a good day. My son's not old enough to be embarrassed by me in that way yet, but I gotta practice.
Oh my word, yes. Oh yeah, my kids have definitely been embarrassed by me. Oh yeah. I will definitely admit that. Even
Yep.
my daughter said while we were hanging over at our friend's house that she was getting frustrated because she was off in a room just reading, which is fine. And she couldn't concentrate because I was laughing in the kitchen and the room opposite her, Jonathan, my son, not Jonathan, my son, Joel, and his friend were laughing their heads off hysterically at things. And so she couldn't concentrate with all the laughing going on.
Oh, how dare.
How dare. And she is perfecting her mother's eye roll very well. Oh, there goes dad. Oh, there goes brother. There we go.
Are you using the term or the phrase that our parents used? If you keep doing that, one day they're gonna roll back and get stuck that way.
I have actually used that line.
Of course you have. All of us end up using our parents' lines at one point or another, and then we hear ourselves say it and we go, "Oh dear Lord, I'm my parents now." Oh,
Yeah, then you're like that commercial when you're buying homeowners insurance
yes.
and you're turning into your parents.
Oh man.
Oh boy, the fun times of having a conversation in the random places we go. But we
And
want
so
to be a
with
little more intentional today. What?
yeah, I was just gonna make the transition, but you go ahead.
Yeah, we want to be a little more intentional today because just as a few weeks ago, we were for me and my wife, we didn't actually I realize now that we didn't really do it on the podcast, but that's okay. Um, but 9/11 took place a few weeks ago, and we always remember that December 7th, 1941. We remember that day, at least certain generations more than others. But today we want to remember the surprise invasion attack of Israel that took place. This isn't something we want to take lightly. We did drop an episode when it happened, right around when it happened. So you especially, but we both talked about a lot of what was happening in a lot of the different places and helped to some of our listeners understand some of the names and what they meant. So, but today we're going to just take a moment and we're going to drop in this today. This isn't just us. Oh, we're recording on this day and we'll post it later. No, we're going to be, as you'll see this evening, we're going to drop this today because we want to take this moment to at least as Triple B say that we support Israel.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And what happened a year ago today, October 7th, was horrendous and atrocious and should not happen to any people group anywhere, regardless of excuses or ideological differences or anything of the sort. So,
Yep. What are some of the thoughts you're having today about this?
I follow a lot of Israel news from a variety of different perspectives, and quite a few of them are posting, whether on social media or through different venues, like a moment by moment timeline. Like at this moment last year, the rockets started and everybody went into their shelters, whether community shelter or secure room in the house. And then 30 minutes ish later, they post another update of at this moment last year, the fence between Gaza and Israel was breached um, on a small scale. And then a few minutes later, at this moment last year, it was breached by tractors and terrorists on motorcycles and on foot, and a
Mm-hmm.
couple of trucks came across the border flooding into Israel. And uh, so I've been
Mm-hmm.
getting those updates throughout the day, um, while also watching what's happening today. And um,
Mm-hmm.
Israel's under fire again from rockets today while all of this is taking place. And it's a tense situation over there. Just last week, Iran launched a bazillion um, ICBMs at Israel, and the Iron Dome system caught a lot of them, but didn't catch all of them. And since then, the Israeli government has been talking about and planning a response to Iran. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I spoke with a friend of mine last Thursday, and today's Monday for our listeners.
Right.
So a few days ago, um, who lives in Israel, has for 8 years, and he said, it's the Middle East. We have to respond somehow because
Yeah.
if we don't, no one will ever take us seriously again. So even if it's just one rocket, we have to do something.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure many of our listeners have been watching the news to one level or another, whether you get Israeli news or you're watching the tiny snippets of it on our American news of our current administration telling them what they can and cannot hit and all this kind
Right.
of stuff, and the French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron calling for an arms calling for the world to stop sending Israel arms.
Oh, I
Um,
did not hear that. Oh,
yep.
wow.
And
Hmm.
while Israel is attacking the terrorist positions, the Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, our government is sending millions of dollars in humanitarian aid to Lebanon.
Hmm.
There's just so much. It's a very convoluted situation right now over there. And so
Yeah.
while we remember what happened a year ago, it's still ongoing. And the war in Gaza is still taking place. It's wrapping up, but it's certainly not over yet.
Right.
Israel is clearing out the terrorists in the Gaza Strip, and meanwhile also attacking terrorist positions in Lebanon and Syria,
Mm-hmm.
while getting shot at from Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot going on over there,
I'm
and
going
our
to admit, I want to admit something here.
sure,
I have not been following it as much through the news simply because I have not been able to, I don't have the stamina with news right now,
sure,
which I think a lot of people could be in the same position with because um, after COVID, I couldn't even watch the news. And even during COVID, it was difficult, but I knew, okay, I need to be on top of something about this. So I am happy to listen more about what you're learning. There are some things I have heard though. One is that the Hezbollah leader was killed. Is
hmm
that correct? Okay. And
yes,
then
the leader who'd been in charge for 20 something years was killed in an
okay.
airstrike, and then I don't remember if it was. I think it was his son-in-law that officially took over several days later. It wasn't immediate, um, but he officially took over several days later, and 4 days after that, he was eliminated.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, the one that I have been saving my stamina for
hmm
is to now I've heard this guy a couple of times in short snippets, but it's the son of a Hamas leader addressing the UN.
Yes, yeah. Is it the guy that wrote "Son of Hamas"?
I think so, yes. I was actually looking that up just a moment ago to try to confirm all that. Um, he uh yeah, Son of Hamas, an autobiography published back in 2010. So yes, its name is
Absolutely
Yusuf.
phenomenal book. Anybody
Hmm.
who wants a better understanding of the Hamas terrorist organization, specifically terrorist organizations and how they are organized and how they recruit people, and some of their ideologies from someone who used to be a part of it. Literally, the son of, I think he was the founder of Hamas, or one of the two or
Co-founder.
three founders
Yeah.
of Hamas.
Yeah. The son of a co-founder. Yeah.
Absolutely. If anybody knows about gangs in America, it's
Mm-hmm.
it terrorist organizations in the Middle East run very, very similarly. They recruit very similarly, but they also carry a lot of religious ideology and connotation as well. So it's
Right.
some of the most violent gangs you've ever heard of, plus weird extremist religion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll say very openly, I have Muslim friends. I am not
Mm-hmm.
anti-Muslim. I am not anti-Islam. Um, I hold different religious views, obviously. Anybody who's ever heard anything on this podcast knows that. But
Right.
but there's a very, very big difference between a Muslim person and a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
There are
Yeah.
maybe billions uh, of Muslims on the planet, and the vast majority of them are good folk trying to live their lives and doing
Yeah.
the best they can with what they have. And that I don't think that gets said often enough here in America. But that does not at all downplay the the horrors of the actions that come from terrorists.
Right. Right. And as with any spectrum of belief or practice within any sort of group of any kind, that when you have a source material, that source material, depending on how you read it and how you interpret it, it can really support whatever your agenda is, which is
Mm-hmm.
the sad thing. I was just pointing out the other day, I was showing my son the trailer to the Book of Eli. Thankfully, it's a lot tamer than the movie, but
Okay.
explaining some of the premise behind it and why this guy wanted this book. Now, Joel, my son, he's not so um, he's not so certain as to what the book is. He's got to guess that it is the Bible. So, but it is interesting to see though that what's it's not just a conflict of territory here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just a conflict of I don't like you and you don't like me.
Of
It is a
course.
conflict of this is my book, not your book. And this is how I read it and how you don't read it in some cases. But in this case, it's actually taken to a deeper, more personal shared interest, at least as we partially or more intimately understand it, that Allah, this God is my God, and this is how my God has told me to treat you. Whereas for the Israelites, no, this is my God, and this is how he's taught me to treat you. And
Right.
so it's not just the source material of being the Bible or some sort of holy scripture, because really it's quite distinct with the Quran and with the Tanakh. But it is down to who is God and what are we trying to do in his name, declare in his name, and be known by in his name. And
Mm-hmm.
so it strikes at some very deep chords. And I don't pretend to understand all of it. I really don't. And I think with any sort of remembrance such as now, it's not so much of knowing, oh, I know all about what happened and everything. It is just it is that action of I'm here. I'm not saying anything. I'm willing to listen if you want to speak, but I'm just here. Let's just sit in this moment and allow ourselves to appreciate the loss, grieve the loss, and be together in this moment of severe sadness, because it's not done. We look back at 9/11. We look back at, well, we really look back at, I could even go back to just say the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That war finished. But when we look back at say 9/11, we really can we actually say it's been finished? Yes, Osama bin Laden was killed. He was killed. And in some way we can get, I would say, some closure on that. But at the same time, we've got something right now going on where it's a constant reminder, not just for the soldier, but for the citizen, the average citizen, that I am at war right now. Somebody wants to take my life. And that's on either side of the fence, really. That's for Israelis and or for just citizens of the Hamas territory. But at the same time, this is a very human factor, very human issue going on here. There are lives that are being taken. There are people who are hungry, who are distraught, who have had such significant loss that to treat that as anything so nonchalantly or as insignificant is a betrayal to our own sense of dignity.
Much less to justify it as having been righteous, as some have.
Exactly. I completely agree. Is there something that's been on your mind that you want to remember for this day? That you've been.
Well, I don't know if we've ever out and out said this on the podcast, but my family and I are in the process of trying to move to Israel.
Mhm.
And we have been since long before a year ago. It's been a longer journey than we anticipated, but um, we've said it on the podcast that I'm a counselor, and we want to go and bless the people of Israel and counsel them through grief and loss and trauma and anxiety, depression, anything and everything we can help with.
Right.
And we felt that was our life's direction um, back in January of 2021. So it's been a while, and we're in process trying to go. Um, because we're going to go do humanitarian type work, we are raising
Mhm.
support to go do that. That's been the hesitation, or the that's why it's taken so long.
Right.
If we were going under the employ of someone else, then we probably would have been there years ago. But yeah, we're in the process of raising support, and this is why my family, in particular, takes such interest in the daily occurrence, daily goings on in
Right.
Israel, and keeps track of the news there specifically and stuff. Um,
Mhm.
and so, um,
I
so
would
right.
point out, if I may take a moment to boast about you, this is the effort that you have tried to do. You even tried to find a way to get over there to help farmers,
Mhm, mhm.
because the farmers are, like anyone else in the society, are really being they're struggling right now, right?
Absolutely. And after last October the 7th, um, many of the foreign workers who come to Israel to help the farmers, a lot of them were Thai folks, some other um, East Asian countries. People come for work to work in fields and stuff. And but after the attack, many of them that were able to left. They went home.
Right.
So the farmers were without literally hands and in their fields, or milking the goats, or feeding, or they just didn't have the manpower to do it. And
Yeah.
so there have been different groups that have gone over to help with that. We tried to do that. It didn't. The timing and the connection ended up falling through, so that didn't end up working. Um, but yes, that was one of the routes that we pursued, um,
Mm,
beginning of this year, end of last year. Yeah.
okay. But the need for counselors right now, I think, is definitely what some people might consider a essential worker, um, for persons to be able to process what they've been through
Hmm.
and to get back to a functional lifestyle of some kind that would enable them to continue to just operate in a way that's complementary to themselves, to each other, and to the just moving forward, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And not having been there yet, I say this with a grain of salt because I don't know this from personal on the ground experience, but from my understanding, Israeli citizens are extremely resilient people,
Hmm.
and they go through a lot together as a society, and the societal understandings are that our nation is the size of New Jersey. The rest of the world hates us for one reason or another. We are on our own by and large, and we will do what we have to do to survive. And we will choose not to let our enemies steal our joy. We're going to live
Right.
our lives not in fear.
Right.
Um, and from my understanding, that's generally the consensus. But that doesn't mean um, that there isn't trauma and grief and loss to be dealt with. We've heard from others, Americans that have uh, one guy in Tennessee that has made over 20 trips in and out of Israel, doing different tours and connections and stuff. Um,
Wow.
he took a trip, I think it was in March or April of this year,
Hmm.
and he
Hmm.
said, I've never seen the citizens of Israel so melancholy. So
Mm.
they're trying to just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and keep rolling, but
Right.
it's harder and harder and harder because after last October's after last October's attack, the world grieved with Israel for about a day and a half, and then completely flipped on them.
Hmm.
And ever since then, they've been the antagonist in the global news perspective. And
Yeah.
you and I have talked on here before about how um, global anti-Semitism has just skyrocketed since last October, and
Yep.
despite the single front war in Gaza and now the multi-front war, despite all of that, Jews from around the world in the diaspora are still flooding home to Israel because they would rather be united and under rocket fire in Israel than dispersed and being persecuted in different places around the globe. A
Hmm.
couple of months ago, the head rabbi in France said that Jews in France have less than 10 years before we are completely unwelcome here.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and that was a couple of months old. And since then,
Yeah.
we've seen more anti-Semitic attacks and taggings of their homes to get marked with spray paint and attacks
Yeah.
in public, and not to mention university campuses. So um, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Um, and my wife and son and I are in the process of trying to move over there so we can help.
Hmm. And I'm so thankful for that. I really am. I have been, not to toot my own horn, but I have just really been a big supporter of what you're doing and what you're trying to do. My
Yes, you
wife and
have.
I have tried to enable you in any way we can to make this happen and to continue to support you as a family with your own needs and with your own struggles just moving forward. It's just been it's been a privilege really to partner with you in this venture. When you told me last week, or when you told me earlier today that you were getting ready to do some things regarding paperwork, it's just, oh wow, this is fantastic. I am so excited. This is going to be great.
Yes.
So if I may ask, are there any ways that you've already, you guys have looked at and just getting into getting to learn and to know more about the people and getting really it seated into a community there?
So um, the paperwork that I was just looking at, I've started an application for Hebrew University so that we
Hmm.
can go and learn Hebrew thoroughly, but also learn the culture and the people and the mindset, the worldview, uh, so that I don't I, I don't want to go in with uh, let me say that differently. When you counsel somebody, you make assumptions about the culture that the person is coming
Yeah,
from.
right.
And I've only ever thus far counseled Americans
Yeah,
and people who have immigrated to America to marry an American.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so I've worked with American husband and a Brazilian wife, um, American husband and Hispanic or Filipino or whatever. Um, I've,
Mhm.
I've I've counseled in those contexts, but that's very, very different than going and counseling in a context where there's a communal societal trauma. They have
Right.
societal trauma, and they deal with it together as in groups. Not to mention that they, as most of the Middle East, are an honor shame culture, whereas here in America we're
Yeah.
very much not. So we have some
Right.
learning to do once we get on the ground to learn Hebrew, so um, we can we've had lots of conversations with people who have done tours of Israel and said you don't really need to learn Hebrew. You can get
Hmm.
around with just English, and that's perfectly true if you're just buying groceries and having conversations with your neighbors. But to have
Right.
counseling level heart to heart conversations, we need to be fluent in their heart language. So, uh,
Oh, very well said. Very well said. I couldn't agree more. Mm.
so yeah, we're working on getting plugged into Hebrew University. Um, and so we can learn Hebrew, learn the context and the people well, so that we can help them as best we're
Yeah.
able to.
Yeah. Well, this has been one of the more serious episodes we've had, but it's an important one. Not all episodes are filled with being jocularity and,
Yeah.
as Father Mulcahy would put it. um, and but I would personally like to stress. I'm not saying this is what Matt believes, but I want to personally stress for me is that in over the course of my life, I have gotten to know the God of the Bible, and getting to know Him, getting to know the relationship He has with Israel, and continues to have with Israel. I would stress
Hmm.
it puts me in a healthy position to understand where my place is in all this, and I want to continue to vocalize my support of Israel in whatever way I'm capable of doing, to say that God has not forgotten his people.
Right.
And as I often explain to my kids, as Israel being my spiritual older sibling, I don't know fully about what you're going through. I don't pretend to know everything you've gone through and the history of abuse that you've been through. But I thank you for the fact that you're still there. You're making decisions the best way you can. And I support you in going forward. And I thank you that you continue to honor life, both that you have taken, but the life that you also continue to try to give to those around you, and not just um, our their Israeli brothers and sisters. And so, um, God continues to be good, and what He does is good. We have to make decisions here in this world, but I just continue to pray and hope that, and that hope isn't just, oh, I hope something else will happen. It's a certainty of knowing God will see to His promises to the people of Israel, and they will come to fruition. I
Hmm.
truly believe that. I truly believe that. So thank you, Israel, for continuing to be God's light, God's people, for going through everything you've gone through to continue to be his people. And I continue to pray for your stamina, your and your grief, your loss, and your dedication to continue to praise and worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there's any of our listeners that would like more information about what my family is up to and would like to connect, please send us an email at beardedbiblebrothers@gmail.com. Otherwise, we'll talk to you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.